please. Linda, could you please call the roll to establish a quorum? We got 8. We're good.
Eric Guerra, Patrick Kennedy, Garrett Gatewood,
Here.
Karina Talamontes,
Here.
Jeff Slowey,
Here.
Larry Carr, Stephanie Wynn, Jay Chenier,
Here.
Darren Soon,
Here.
Don Natoli, Saul Hernandez,
Here.
Angelique Ashby, Sue Frost, here. Alan Warren, Lori Hewer. Here.
Good to go. All right, I'm going to ask our legal counsel to lead us in the pledge. Let's make sure we do it right and legally.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I feel better now. All right. We are going to do one thing a little bit different from the agenda in that we're going to move our closed session to the end so we don't have to get up and walk there and then walk back. I don't believe we'll have a report out from the closed session. Is that correct, Rivka?
I believe so, yes.
So we'll go with that. All right, we'll move to item 2.0, public comment on matters not on the agenda. I have 3 speakers, I believe. These are all not on the agenda items. Is that correct?
I
Doesn't
don't
say.
think any of them are on specific agenda items.
Okay. Jane Wise. After Jane is Julie Neal and Ray Wilson, I believe. Hey, Larry.
Hello, my name is Jane Wise, speaking for the Friends of the Orangevale Library. I have with me friends, board members, and library patrons.
Could you move the mics a little bit closer?
Oh, both?
Just stand right between the two of them. Perfect. Thank you.
Is that good?
Much better.
Okay. We are here today to encourage you in the strongest terms possible to move ahead with the Orangevale Library project. I also speak for Brad Squires, president of the Orangevale Chamber of Commerce, who could not be here today because of a prior agreement. He is also chairman of the newly formed Orangevale Community Council. As he put it in an email to me, I am 100% in favor of this, and I know that goes for the entire Chamber Board of Directors as well. For me, a permanent library, the idea of one, began with a comment from then-member Board of Supervisors Roger Nilo, who stated in 2002 that Orangevale Library was underserved. Sadly, that is still the case today. Orangevale has now been 106 years without a permanent home. It is now in its 7th location since 1912. We attended your meeting about 2 years ago when the Group 4 architects made a PowerPoint presentation showing plans for a new library in Orangevale. These conceptual plans, including floor plans, were developed as a result of a needs assessment, focus groups, community meetings, and input. If you've read the letters you may have received urging you to move forward with this project, you know we have been through this planning process more than once. To put it bluntly, Orangevale is tired of being treated as a second-class citizen. The Board of Supervisors set aside $5 million towards building a permanent library in its long-term budget planning in 2014. Anticipating the opening of a new library in 2019. We keep going through a planning process where no plan is ever executed. Without taking you through that history, the urgency now is space. Space limitations at the current facility cause serious problems for patrons. When there is an author presentation, there is no access to the children's area because that is the only space where chairs can be set up for the audience. Frequently, these programs occur on a Saturday when families would like to enjoy time in the children's area. The book club discussions are held in the teen area, so the teens can't get access to their computers. Craft programs, such as scrapbooking, take a large space using large tables. So when they occur...
Ms. Wise, I'm going
Yes.
to ask you to see if you can wrap up, please.
I'm almost there. There is no space left for quiet reading since the comfortable chairs have to be moved. Our understanding is that the original plan for the permanent library next to the Orangevale Community Center is several years away due to budget constraints. With the current need being more space, we support the idea of repurposing an existing building until a permanent building can be constructed. We would like to be treated with the same level of service as patrons of other libraries in the system. While many of them are now operating with additional open hours, our patrons are stuck with the same hours in an insufficient space. As you might suspect, we are not going away soon. Small but mighty, we will continue to advocate for you and the Board of Supervisors to do the right thing for Orangevale by getting this project off the ground.
Thank you. Julie Neal?
Hi, my name's Julie Neal, and Jane is a hard act to follow, but I did want to add my comments in that I am a fairly recent volunteer to the Friends of the Orangevale Library and had the opportunity this summer to spend time at the farmers market. We had many citizens come up to us at the market and ask about a new library location. As you may or may not know, there is a sign on Hazel Avenue that's been advertising a new location for the Orangevale Library for many years. And the citizens of the community are wondering when that is going to come about, whether it be at the Hazel location or repurposing another building somewhere else. I guess what I wanted to say, to let you know, is that it's not just those of us who are take the time to volunteer for the library that are interested in having this happen, but the regular citizens of Orangevale, many of whom bring their children and families to the programs held there. As Jane noted, we are really fortunate that we have a very active library and wonderful programs that draw in members of the community. It is very frustrating and very sad that we don't have the space necessary to accommodate all the people who want to participate. And in fact, have had to limit some of the children's programs because there just is not enough space for everybody to fit in. So I hope you'll take these comments into account as you think about what to do next. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ray Wilson?
Hello, Chairman Schneer and members of the board. I am Ray Wilson, a library patron and volunteer. I would like to make a few observations about the library and some of the library procedures. According to the current system-wide distribution of materials versus the old branch specialized materials, I find that when browsing, it is more difficult to find specific authors than when we had the branch specific sections. It also appears that there's more duplicates or triplicate copies of materials, especially books and DVDs, with the new system. This is noticeable in the children's picture book area especially. Upkeep of materials has decreased. This includes cleanliness, but more importantly, I notice more problems with the accuracy of the materials, such as decimal points, biography and moving up identifiers missing, and so forth. Next, increased library hours and summer reading. Both have increased material usage. However, with the increase, it looks to me that shelving of materials has slowed. Does the library use a metric or some other method of determining how quickly materials are accurately shelved? Regarding pulling and holding materials for interlibrary loan. On many occasions, I have asked why the picking list of DVDs is not completely alphabetized. There are 3 different sections individually alphabetized. This has become more noticeable in the last 6 weeks or so, with the number of DVDs increasing. Our librarian has talked with those responsible for this and has been told they are aware of the problem, but it cannot be remedied. Using multiple alphabets slows pulling. For me, when foreign language materials are requested to be pulled, especially Chinese, Russian, Persian, or Arabic, I am unsure of the exact request. I will typically pull all of the author's materials requested. This likely requires shelvers to shelve material not requested. Some foreign language materials, especially books, have the information similar to the request on an insert in the book. Why can't these inserts be on all materials? Recently, information on the date of a hold request has changed in part to, quote, an estimated hold expiration date, close quote. I have been unable to get an explanation on why an estimated date is used versus a definite date. I have two concerns regarding using an estimated date. When a request is outstanding for a book, those waiting should have the book available in the shortest time. Second, when pulling material from the hold area, an estimate date slows the process. For example, if a patron has more than one book on request with the same estimated hold date and only one listed to pull, the pull must look at books to only pull a listed book. Having one firm date means all materials on that date or before should be pulled and returned to circulation. Also, with the estimated hold expiration date, there is uncertainty, and materials that might have been missed remain on the hold shelf longer.
Mr.
Again,
Wilson,
thank you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the observations. I'm going to ask Rivka if there's someone who could sit down and go
Our
through this.
collection services manager, Lisa Dale, is sitting behind me. She will follow up with you. If you could tell us what branch, that would also help.
Which branch? Carmichael.
I didn't.
Okay, so we'll follow up with you.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming down. Appreciate it. All right, that's matters not on the agenda. 3.0 presentations. Friends of the Library, what you got for us today? I don't see a check, so I'm not sure.
No check today.
Well, okay, next, let's go.
But tomorrow we are finishing the final sort for the books that will be distributed to first graders this year. And so I think we are sorting about 4,000 tomorrow, and that means about 16,000 books are going to go out to first graders this year. The other thing we're doing is we are partnering with the library on Election Day. We have a lot of enthusiastic volunteers who are going to try to help make sure that things go smoothly at the drop-off voting locations. Not the voting centers, because there are other people for that, but I think it's 15 branches that we're working on providing volunteers to help, with ballot, just help make the process smoother. Any questions?
Nope. I will say that Mr. Guerra and I both had a chance to flip some pancakes, blueberry, chocolate, and plain on Saturday morning or Sunday morning? Saturday morning at Colonial Heights. Your friends out there did a great job.
I will share that with them.
So,
Thank you.
Mr. Guerra ate quite a few of them.
A few sausage patties as well, too.
All right. As I said, so Linda, I think you got everyone who is now attending. We're going to do closed session at the end, so we don't have to walk up and walk back. We'll go to the Director's Report 5.0.
Oh, thank you.
You're welcome.
In addition to my written report, which I hope just scintillated and delighted you, I wanted to bring up a couple of other things. First of all, voting. Once again, we are ballot drop-off sites, and the most exciting thing is that we figured out how to open the 15 of our libraries that are not voters' service centers from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So there is no excuse for not voting. Walnut Grove is a voter service center. It's open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. But all branches around the system that aren't voter service centers, with the exception of Cortland and Isleton, are open 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. thanks to staff who've been very creative about their scheduling, as well as the friends who are helping us by volunteering on those days. A couple of other things that I wanted to mention. We neglected to put the letter from SPL President Anita Scurry regarding the Friends 509A3, so you'll find it at your place on the podium or on the dais. If you just want to, it's further clarification from her remarks of last last month, I want to mention I missed the pancake breakfast because I was doing an outreach event in Oak Park, which was really gratifying because almost everybody had a library card and they all talked about how much they love the library. And then finally, I have two more announcements. We have a visitor from Finland, Antti Matanen. Sorry, I was so close. I said it right earlier. Antti Matanen from Jyväskylä, Finland. And he's here because we are kind of a national model for a collection tool called Collection HQ. We do it really, really well. And he's spending a month with us, and we're really happy that he's here. He's pretty delightful. And we're also proud to be named as that library that does something right. Always makes us feel good. And I especially want to point out that Jyväskylä, Finland actually provides fellowships for people to do international travel to learn best practices from other places. Isn't that a great idea? And then finally, it seemed like a good idea. Thank you, Auntie. Finally, you will remember that in July, the board approved a new job description to allow us to build our new HR manager, and I'm very happy to announce that Christopher True, who's been with the library system for 5.5 years, is finishing up his degree in business with an emphasis on human resources, has been offered and has accepted this opportunity. Chris, you want to stand up, please? And please join me in welcoming Christopher. He's one of those people who sort of jumps at every chance to do something, and before you get the idea out of your mouth, he's already figured out a solution, often using technology. And I know we have some fans over here of Christopher who know him from his time as the Orangevale Library Supervisor. So thank you for coming to celebrate. That was great. Any other questions?
Okay, great.
All right.
Thank you very much. Welcome and congratulations. Let's move on to 6.0 information, 6.1 monthly financials, 6.2 monthly treasurers, 6.3 monthly financial, and 6.4 monthly treasurers for August. Any questions on those four? Okay, we'll go to our consent calendar. I have a motion by Mr. Slowey, a second by Mr. Carr. Any comments on this one? I just want to comment briefly. 7.4 is the library director's contract renewal, so we're very happy that you'll still be with us. This was a very easy negotiation and very much a unanimous vote on the board to retain you and keep you going. We think you're doing a great job, so thank you very much.
I
With
really
that,
appreciate it.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Let's move to 8.0, Sacramento Public Library Authority Fund Balance Workshop.
Okay. You ready? Okay. Jen, are you going to do yours from there or from here? This really is not the Three Stooges, I hope. So last month, for those of you who were at the meeting, we began the discussion of the library's significant fund balance. This has been an ongoing topic for about a year, and we realized that we were not quite ready for prime time last month, so we went back and thought about what we needed to present to you and decided from our perspective it's easier to digest a written report and then have us do the PowerPoint to explain it. It's a long-standing issue. A lot of it has to do with the way the JPA is written. A lot of this has been going on for the 25 years that we've been a JPA, both under the old JPA and the new JPA. So we're hoping that between the written materials that you have in your packets, as well as the PowerPoint, we're going to clarify this. We're not asking for action today. we're asking for direction. So with that, I'll turn it over to our esteemed council.
Hello, everyone.
Miss Esteemed Council.
Thank you. So at the meeting last month, there were a number of questions that came up about the overall structure of the financial provisions in the Joint Powers Agreement, as well as some specific questions about how those funds can be spent. And so I had provided you with a memo last week kind of outlining that, but we wanted to start the presentation today with kind of the highlights from that, just as a to lay the foundation, and then staff will take back over. So we'll start with Section 11C3 of the Joint Powers Agreement talks about base services, and that those are the first priority for funding. And they're defined as all operating costs for the level of service hours identified in Appendix A of the Joint Powers Agreement, but then they can be adjusted by the library board. So for instance, this past budget that you just approved included an increase in hours in a number of branches. So that's included in the base services calculation. And then the JPA defines operating costs to include personnel, collections, utilities, janitorial and grounds maintenance services, and indirect costs. And then the next section, or in Section 11, it also has Section C5, which talks about the calculation for annual supplemental funding, which was one of the questions that came up last month, was what is supplemental funding? And so under the JPA, staff looks at the estimated county funding available for the fiscal year, and then they deduct from that the direct costs for base services, the indirect costs for base services, and a prudent reserve, and then that is what you're left with is considered annual supplemental funding amount. So looking back through some of your historical records, there was annual supplemental funding that was distributed according to the formula in Appendix B for the 2008-2009 fiscal year, but that was the last time that supplemental funding was allocated, given that the library then went into the recession years. So let's see. So then, in terms of what you can spend supplemental funding on, the Joint Powers Agreement says that you can spend it for enhanced library services or for capital costs related to future facilities. And the Joint Powers Agreement defines enhanced services as additional hours that exceed base services, collection, or you can spend it on collection materials, indirect costs, capital investment, maintenance or repairs, or other library purposes. And then annual supplemental funding is not the same as what the library staff refers to as County Fund 11A funds, which are defined in the Joint Powers Agreement as in Section 12D, and it's there's a formula for calculating county funds. So the property tax that is collected from county funds, so that they can maintain the buildings. So historically, before the 2007 JPA was adopted, a certain percentage of those funds was spent on maintenance. And so in order to ensure that that was ongoing, the 2007 JPA had a formula for calculating that to ensure that those funds continued to be distributed to all of you. And so currently, you get $9.40 per square foot for library facilities that are owned or where there is a maintenance requirement in a lease. So the county, each jurisdiction that is responsible for the library maintenance receives those funds. And so then that's kind of the overview of how funding is spent. And then that takes us to the specific questions that were asked at the last meeting. So specifically, you were looking at Section 12B of the Joint Powers Agreement. And so my understanding of the questions were, what is considered a future facility under Section 12B? And then who is responsible for any increased costs for a future facility? And so in looking at I'm not going to pretend that the Joint Powers Agreement is a model of clarity. There are a lot of terms that are used that aren't defined, that are all meant to sort of mean similar things. And so that leaves us with, legal principles of how to interpret a contract that are where you need to look at the contract as a whole and try to interpret it so that you are consistent with the overall purpose of the agreement and that you don't have an absurd result from interpreting it, and you don't leave out anything that, or leave it to be meaningless. And so in looking at Section 12B and the overall structure of the JPA, my opinion was that future facilities include facilities that are moved or expanded. And that was based on the fact that the overall structure of the Joint Powers Agreement requires the member jurisdictions to pay for capital costs. And so Section 12C requires jurisdictions to pay for capital improvements and repairs for existing library facilities. And Section 12B says that that jurisdictions have to pay for capital needs of future facilities. And there isn't really any basis to think that, so the alternative to having the member jurisdictions pay for capital investments would be to have the library's operating budget pay for those investments. And that's not consistent with any of the other provisions in the library, in the Joint Powers Agreement. And so there's no reason to think that that was intended somehow, that if you had a moved or expanded facility, that would somehow be able to tap into the library's operating budget versus a new facility. It would encourage jurisdictions to just expand existing facilities and never create a new facility in an area that was underserved. And so, but in looking at Section 12A, it does seem to suggest that where you have a leased facility, that the operating budget of the JPA should continue to pay the existing lease payments, even if a facility is moved or expanded, just given the basic nature of a lease, right? You're never guaranteed to be in the same spot. The owner can decide they want to sell the building, they can increase the rent. And so it seems logical that that the library would continue to make those payments consistent with 12A, that says that they should continue to fund leased facility costs as part of base services for existing leased libraries. And so with that, I'll turn it back over to staff, who's going to get back into the issue of fund balance.
So from the non-legal side of things, so fund balance.
Hang on one second. Appreciate that. Do you want to ask a question now, or you want to wait through the? Are there things for Jen specifically?
Yes.
Let's take it a piece at a time if we can.
Thank you.
So go ahead, Sue.
Jan, I want to thank you for all that work that you did on this. I had a specific question around the 11A funds. My understanding is that the 11A funds are not the supplemental funding. They are intended for libraries that were in the JPA when it began, the existing libraries in the JPA, and those funds are calculated and allocated annually and set aside in a trust, so to speak, or distributed into a trust or into a separate fund that covers capital maintenance and repair, and not capital improvement, but maintenance of and refresh of the libraries that were existing. Is that correct?
It's yes and yes and maybe a little bit no. So what Fund 11A does, it's a payment that we make to the county, and I believe we make it 4 times a year. They bill us at that $9.40 a square foot. It's for the 9 buildings that were built by the county pre-JPA. So that includes, for example, the Sylvan Oaks Library, which is now, I believe, which is now in the city limits of Sylvan Oaks. So it's those facilities, and it covers major repairs like for HVAC or roof or things like that. It's work that the county does on our behalf. We have a process, just as we do with the City of Sacramento, and they take those repairs out of that. We built a fence at different facilities over the years. Fund 11A has paid for some of those kinds of things. So it's the annual assessment to make sure that the buildings are functioning. It also pays for kind of routine maintenance issues in county buildings.
So
Yeah, that's pretty much
It's not included in your supplemental funding calculations in your graph that you provided. That's
No,
not.
it's part of the regular
Part of that.
budgeting process.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if I can add, so the county, Fund 11A, we actually cut 4 checks back to the county. So we budget for fiscal year 2019, $11.1 million. And again, that money is sent.
1.1 million.
$1.1 million. And that money is sent to the county, and then they deposit into their fund. So we do not set up a trust or retain the monies on our financials. And then in addition to the county, we
You don't set aside, you don't do that for all the libraries? You don't set that aside annually?
So we calculate based on the formula, and we send 1.1 million back to the
Oh,
county.
you just send it to them?
Right, back to the county's finance. And then in addition to that, we also budget $130,000 that we send back to the City of Elk Grove, and $40,000 to the City of Galt. And again, these are intended for building maintenance, repairs, and so forth.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Johnny?
Okay, so moving on to fund balance, as I mentioned last time, the basic definition is the difference between assets and liabilities. And we also reflect the fund balance amounts in the adopted budget annually when we adopt the budget in May, and also in September, as well as the mid-year budget reviews. So the Government Accounting Standards Board issued statement number 54 several years back. And so one of the requirements is that we separate the fund balances into 5 different categories, depending on the constraints and uses of funds. So we have what's known as non-spendable. These are such as permanent trust or things of that nature, restricted fund balances, committed, assigned, and unassigned. The majority of the library's fund balances are in the restricted categories, which are restricted for the county and city branches. So the purpose of a fund balance reserve policy is to maintain reasonable level of reserves to help mitigate current and future financial risk from revenue shortfalls, economic downturns, unanticipated expenditures, to address cash flow needs such as for payroll and accounts payable, and also ensure long-term fiscal sustainability. So what should the level of reserves be? And this is a pretty common question, but there's really no easy answer to this question. And as you saw in the survey, it ranged from 10 to 67%, depending on the size of the organization and the needs of their finances. And then also based on the survey, we surveyed our partner agencies, which are highlighted in yellow on this slide here.
And can I just mention, we wanted to make sure you saw this. That question came up last month, so it's both on page 89 of your report, and it's in the PowerPoint.
If I can on this, which I think is really an important point, and in reading through a lot of the narrative, which I appreciate what you guys did, the fact that the timing of your cash flow is different than a lot of the folks on this list. So I think we just need to be cognizant of that, because that's a lot of the reason on the cash reserve part, because of the cash flow and not getting money for potentially 6 months at a time.
Right.
So I just want to note that, and I don't know how many of the surveyed municipalities have that type, because cities get quarterly. What do we get, Lainey?
We're almost as dependent as they are, because we don't get property taxes until January, just like they do. So we only get sales tax and spare a few others. So it's a pretty common thing.
Okay.
Thank you.
You have a question?
Yes. On that, I would just like to comment on that, because, and maybe I should wait, but you were talking about cash flow, And that was one of the questions that I had regarding the dry period funding, and you're going to go into that?
Well, if
Yeah, why don't you go ahead?
Okay, go ahead.
PowerPoint.
Yeah,
and
my
then-
apologies. Go ahead and finish the presentation, then we'll go to questions.
And then I'll go back to the narrative, because we're talking so much about facilities that we want to get back to why are we here in the first place, as well as sort of the methodology that we used to get to the report that you have in front of you.
Yeah, so going back to the survey, Citrus Heights have 14 and a quarter reserve policy. City of Elk Grove, 20%, and they actually have 30% based on our survey results. The City of Galt, 25%, Rancho Cordova, 20%, Sacramento, which I understand, established our our reserve policy from, has 10%, and the Sacramento Library also have 10% reserve. So I believe Director Peters wanted comps from the last meeting. So we went back and surveyed the 4 true library JPAs in the state of California, and we received three responses: Santa Clara County Library, Santa Cruz Public Library, and Sonoma County Library. So if you look at the schedule here, Santa Clara is pretty comparable to the Sacramento Library, where in terms of budget, size, and revenue sources. The total operating budget is at about $52.6 million, compared to Sacramento, we're at about $46.9 million. So the size is pretty comparable in terms of budget size, but the number of branches that we serve, we have 28 branches with 2 bookmobiles, whereas they have 8 branches with 2 bookmobiles. And we understand Santa Clara County is in a more affluent neighborhood, so they naturally the sales tax, if they do get sales tax or property taxes, are going to be coming in at a lot higher. So in terms of percentages, the total reserve is 27% for economic uncertainty and 11% for capital asset and deferred maintenance, and then another 2% for technology. 4% for technology, so 42% combined. We're looking at we're proposing a 45%, where when you look at our current reserve, it's currently at 10%, so the first column in red. And so we're proposing 45%, and one, as Chair Chenier mentioned earlier, one is to address cash flow needs. So between July through January, by the time we receive the first property tax payments, we're spending approximately $12.5 million in payroll and other accounts payable needs. So without the fund balances, that means we don't have enough money to cover payroll and other operating needs. And we also did another, sort of the middle column in red, at 35%, that would give us at about $16.4 million in reserve. But that would mean taking away the capital asset and deferred maintenance reserve. So we wanted to give the board a couple of options to look at. 45% may seem high, but for cash flow needs, economic uncertainty, we feel that that's a good target to shoot for. And these are target amounts, so we understand some years there may be high property tax payments. In an economic downturn, we would have these monies available to continue operations. So any question on this schedule? So with the 45%, so what does that mean for the county? So at 45%, the county's reserve would be at about $12.3 million total. So 10% economic uncertainty, cash flow 25%, and 10% for capital asset and deferred maintenance. On the city side, it'll be about $8.8 million, so a total of $21.1 million. And coincidentally, our unfunded liability is at about $21.2 million. So we don't have any money set aside for unfunded liabilities. But if we do establish these reserves, it'll be close to how much we'll need if we need to cover future unfunded liabilities. And then minusing the other restricted fund balances, so we have $21.4 million in projected fund balance as of June 30, 2019, so in about 8 months. And minusing the 45% reserve of $12.3 million. Other restricted fund balances, these are friends' donations, the Schultz Trust, and restricted other fund balances are the supplemental fund reserve, which we have in the staff report at about $385 million. The Civil Cell Tower fund, which we generate from the lease of the Civil Cell Tower, and encumbrances that we have for existing contracts. So the projected fund balance minus the reserve, minus all the restricted fund balances, leave us at about $7.9 million on the county side. And then we're also recommending a future, a prior year central distribution. And as you see in the staff report, the central distribution is office space lease, and also the direct charges to central. And based on the measurements that we work with the city real estate team on and trying to figure out what the office space cost would be, it comes out to about 21% of the central. So central has 160,000 square feet, and approximately 34,000 is staff use, staff space, conference rooms, parking. I mean the garage space for the delivery vehicle. And so based on that formula, it comes out to about 21% of central that could be allocated to other funds.
Johnny, if I may interrupt, I realize it says less one-time transfer, and it's not prior year. This represents 8 years of distributions that were not made, and that's explained in the staff report. But that's what that 3.2 million represents. It's not a one-year thing. It's actually over a period of 8 years that occurred and built.
Yes, it's 8 years at $400,000 per year, so that's how we came up with the 3.2 million. Again, that's a one-time transfer that we're recommending, or that we'll be recommending when we bring this back. And then future budget cost, AMHS machines, so the automated material handling machine, to provide efficiencies within the library operations. Public copiers that are going on 10 plus years, so we'll be recommending to replace those copiers. Bookmobile replacements, it's approximately $500,000, and I understand facility and marketing team are looking at cost estimates, and also the possibility of looking at smaller but more bookmobiles to to be more efficient. So minusing those future budget costs, we have approximately $3.9 million in true net on reserve fund balance. And we explained that in the staff report, where this is monies where, again, based on the board's direction and approval, we could use this money to cover future tenant improvements, building improvements, and so forth that we may need for library purposes. And similarly, at 35%, so following the same concept, we have approximately $6.7 million on the county side that we could, again, potentially look at for building improvements, lease expansion, and things of that nature. And so Chair Chenier asked us a while back to, put what we thought would be the worst case scenario based on the revenue history and the trend that we saw over the last 10 years. And so here's a graph of the county funding sources. As you see in 2009, at the start of the recession, we were at about $20.7 million in property tax revenues. And so it finally hit bottom in fiscal year 2013 as property tax payments are generally a year or two behind the time. So the lowest point is $17.2 million in revenues. And so coming out of the recession, we're finally at about $24.9 million for fiscal year 2019. So again, the lowest point is $17.2 million. And on the city side, pretty much the same trend. Fiscal year 2012, we had a lowest point of $11.7 million in revenues. And that's the combination of the City of Sacramento General Fund contribution as well as Measure X. And then also, if you notice in the red circle, Measure B was passed in 2014. So with the General Fund contribution, Measure X, and Measure B, we're looking at potentially at about $14.5 million in the lowest point if an economic recession were to occur, similar to the Great Recession. So what does that mean with the worst case scenario? So again, looking at revenues, the lowest point for the county would be about $17.2 million. And projected 5-year forecast shows our operating expenditures could be as high as $33.6 million. So basic math, taking revenues minus the expenditures would give us a structural deficit of about $16.4 million on the county, just on the county side. And if we had a 45% reserve, which is about $12.3 million, then we're juggling with a 4.1 million structural deficit for that given year. So, and we understand revenues are going to scale down gradually, so it's not going to be one big drop, hopefully. But by having a sufficient reserve, this will allow...
Johnny, just to clarify, does this assume that you're at your lowest point over each of those 5 years?
Yes.
So you basically flatlined at your worst case scenario on this? Okay, I just want to be clear.
Yeah.
All right.
And expenditures, as we know, that's generally going to go up, and revenues, if it drops, then it's going to be the lowest point. And again, similarly on the city side, revenues could be as low as $14.5 million, expenditures of 25.1, giving us a potentially structural deficit of 10.6 million. And then same concept, a net deficit of approximately 1.8 million if we had a 45% reserve. So if we went with the 35, obviously the net deficit would be a lot higher than what we've shown here. So in summary, again, what constitute a prudent level of reserve for each agency is different from one to another. And at 45%, again, that will help us sustain the economic uncertainty, establish a capital asset and deferred maintenance reserve, and also establish a cash flow reserve for operations. Now, keep in mind that the second two, the capital asset and cash flow reserves, this is a new concept for the library, but we've always had these fund balances on a financial statement, but it's just that it was not reserved. So, and naturally, in good economic times, these are probably the best time to set reserves as we have, funding sources to put it aside. So next steps, we are looking for input from the authority board and hopefully come back with a recommendation in the December meeting.
So, sorry, I'd like to, do you want to ask questions about the PowerPoint, or should I hit a couple of highlights in the narrative?
Why don't you hit your highlights, and then
Okay.
we'll go to the
Well,
authority.
so again, we thought actually having the words in front of us accomplishes two things. The narrative makes it easy to understand what for me personally is a very complex issue as the non-financial person. As Johnny and I discussed the other day, he has a degree in accounting. I have a degree in political science and a library degree. So I'm trying to make sense of all of this from my perspective, from the chair where I sit. And I think we were pretty clear in what the issues were. We did our best to lay them out. I want to make, there was definitely one correction that we need to make, and a couple of other points that I would like to make. And that is that in attachment C, which is page 93, we referenced fiscal year 14-15, and that should actually be 13-14. That was a typo on our part. And then going back to the written narrative itself, we looked, as you know, we looked at a number of different issues, including deferred maintenance, which is a real issue for all of us who have public buildings. And the staff have very strong feelings about having funds set aside that allow us to do the deferred maintenance over and above what we have for through Fund 11A. We also have a philosophy about dry period financing. If we don't need it, we'd rather not go down that road if possible. The other issue that the board has to decide, because the JPA, and this is where our attorney comes back into the picture, supplemental funding has been calculated per the JPA based on budget, not based on actuals. And so that's a decision the board has to make. Do we change that formula? And that can be done through I think you mentioned attachment A in your report. So that becomes that fund that allows the jurisdictions to work with library staff on what do we need to do this year. So there's money in Elk Grove, there's money in Citrus Heights, and we want to refresh the building. Is that how we, we're recommending other uses for other funds for Citrus Heights, for example. So where I think, let's see, let me make sure I have the right page. If you move to page 93, which is attachment C, the very bottom of the page, there's a table that talks about, that sort of models what supplemental funding, what the factor is that is per the JPA. So we factored the funds based on that, and then what the allocation would be per each jurisdiction. And finally, in that last column, it's the what's finally available. There's a difference between restricted and unrestricted. So if you look at the last column, available for allocation to the various jurisdictions is about 3.8 million. So that that models what we included in the PowerPoint. Attachment C in and of itself is really the answers to the questions. We took two strategies. The written report, the narrative, includes answers to some of the questions that Director Frost sent to us that are relevant to the discussion of having a reserve fund balance, of why are we here in the first place? Why are we talking about this? We answered those questions in the narrative report. Any questions that we felt belonged in a separate document are answered in attachment C. So there was a question from Director Budge, there was a question from Director Peters, and then there were 7 questions from Director Frost that we answered throughout the narrative, as well as by saying this is in the staff report. So we tried to lay it out as clearly as possible for you. I hope it worked. And then we answered her questions specifically in the rest of that attachment. So it's a little bit complicated, but we actually made it complicated to try to make it simpler, if that makes sense.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate it, and I know it's been a lot of work, but I think what you've done is laid it out pretty clearly. Let's go to comments here. Mr. Slowey.
2 quick questions and then a comment on your reserve policy.
When you were going through the presentation, the 3.2 million transfer on central distribution, I think you said it last time, I just want to make sure. I know that's a true up from many years. We're putting that 400,000 going forward into the annual budget, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Second, it's just a comment when you showed 290,000 for the bookmobile. I would just remind you that you have several members up here who sit on the RT board, and they occasionally get rid of buses, so you might check, see if there's any deals out there when that comes around.
Actually have an idea for a techmobile.
Okay.
Maybe there's...
We can talk.
Yeah, we can
We'll
talk about
talk,
that.
okay.
Because RT is replacing a lot of buses
Right.
with electric or...
They're not necessarily free, but they are cheaper.
Could they add, well, actually, the cost of a bookmobile fully tricked out as a real bookmobile is $500,000.
Okay.
290 is the county share, 210 is the city share.
All right. So getting to your reserve policy, I know you showed where the various cities and jurisdictions fell. Citrus Heights today is at 15%. 3 years ago, we were at 130%. We wrote a check, $22 million for our new city hall. We paid $8 million cash for some road work. So we are historically a city that goes on the high side of reserves. And you have to remember, we get no property taxes till 2022. So not that I want to brag, but we also have no debt and no unfunded liability. So we recently set a policy at Citrus Heights for our reserves between 35 and 50%. Minimum of 35, maximum of 50. Myself being a banker, I know 130 was probably too much, but 15 scares me. I feel a little naked right now. So I would just say that I am always going to err on the side of more versus less. And where we land is fine, but I personally believe the 10% that the library is at now is way too low.
Okay. Ms. Frost?
Okay, I had a couple of questions on the, I guess I want to thank you for everything you did to help clarify. There were some questions that I still had regarding the report. The one question I had was regarding the central library distribution. I know in your staff report you sort of laid out your philosophy, and what I was looking for was a breakdown of how you came to that $400,000 number. What were the, like an Excel spreadsheet of, what are the costs and how did you gave me a philosophy. I was looking for actual description of the breakdown of those shared services and costs and what was the basis for determining that 400,000. So I know you don't have that today, but I was wondering if there's a way that we can get that.
I guess I thought it was in the report because we literally looked at the space in the building that is used for centralized functions. And so
maybe if you gave it to me in a spreadsheet on a one-pager that shows it so that I can see it through all those words.
We can certainly do that. Okay. And I will tell you, I remembered that we had this conversation and I meant to do it and I apologize.
It's all right.
I forgot. Yes.
On the reserve policy, on this chart on page 93, you are showing the allocation for the supplemental funding by member agency, and then you subtract out 11,900,000. I wonder exactly what that represents. Is that the unfunded liability for SCRS, or what does that represent?
It represents a few things. Johnny has the detail right at his fingertips. I know that part of it is we still have a retiree health contribution. It is no longer for, we eliminated it for staff hired in 2011 and beyond, but it's still on the books for staff who retired earlier, so that's part of it. Part of it is our PERS obligation, and part of it is compensated absences when people leave.
Do you mean your PERS unfunded? Like how much are you funded? Like 80 or 90% funded?
Yeah, we're at about 80%. So the 11.9 million, that's the county's portion of the CalPERS unfunded liability, which is 6.5 million. OPEB, which is other post-employment benefits, that's at 4.4 million. And compensated absences at about $1 million. So that's the breakdown of the 11.9 million unfunded liabilities. And on the city side, it's approximately 9.3 million.
So I was looking at that, and I'm thinking about your reserve policy and your comparison between the other agencies that submitted their reserve policies. And cash flow is not one that any other agency reserves for. That's number one. Number two, I've never heard of anyone reserving the full amount of their unfunded liability as a concern. I mean, I kind of see property taxes as a pretty stable income. You know it's going to come in, and when we're looking at this graph, even in the worst of times, there was still money in reserve. And so I'm curious about, I mean, I think, I question, whether or not, we need to set aside millions of dollars in reserve to cover unfunded, just in case the library authority decides to close down so that we can pay for retirement when this is money that's taken out of supplemental funding that could be put to work in our libraries. I mean, that's money that appears to be directly subtracted from each of the jurisdictions that have dreams that maybe could be making things happen. So that I wanted to make that comment, and I wanted to say, put in another comment regarding the dry period financing. I know you don't like it, Rivka, I respect that, but I would like to see a cash flow analysis that shows what is your cash flow requirements, how much would that dry period financing cost. It costs you money to have 11.7 million in the bank that's not being used and not earning interest. That might cost you a lot more than the dry period financing. And then at the same time, I wanted to refer back to the JPA agreement. In the JPA agreement, it talks about the Finance Advisory Committee, and I know in your report somewhere there's a comment regarding the Finance Advisory Committee, also known as the Budget Advisory Committee. I think, I'm trying to remember, a Budget Advisory Committee. I think they're two different things. The Finance Advisory Committee, according to the JPA agreement, is an advisory committee that's put together at the staff level, has a representative from every single jurisdiction at the staff level, people that work in finance, and they actually did work in 2007 and 8 and 9 to kind of put together the recommendations, which I read all of them. And it looks like they haven't met since. To my knowledge, the county has stated they haven't met. But I wonder if I would like to see us bring the Finance Advisory Committee into this conversation to look at, I have several questions around, is this really the best way we can do it? And if we look, maybe there's a better way if something that would save us some money, and maybe they'll have some ideas that we didn't think of. The other thing that I like about doing it according to the JPA agreement is that we're all represented on the Finance Advisory Committee that's helping us from the staff level. We have someone from every jurisdiction in the conversation. And I think they worked hard on it. I think they're supposed to be meeting, they haven't been meeting for years. So I think it wouldn't be a bad thing to bring them back into, according to the JPA agreement, to bring them into this conversation.
I'm going to turn it over to Jen because she helped us with some of this, and I think she can clarify one of your early questions.
So my understanding of the Budget Audit Committee is that staff is invited. I know city staff attends.
No, the finance, I'm talking about the finance advisory. I'm not talking, the Budget Audit Committee is members of the board, and all, those are not, that is not what is stipulated in the JPA agreement.
Right, I understand. So we had the finance and advisory committee, and then my understanding, I think you're referring to a comment in my memo where I had said that also known as the budget audit committee.
Right.
And I had said that based on my understanding that staff is also invited to the budget audit committee, and I know that city staff participates in budget audit committee meetings. I know the board is also participates, but I think staff is invited. That's my understanding. And so that was, so I'm sorry if I created some, I just wanted to apologize if I created some confusion there.
No, I think, I was just trying to, I wanted to clarify that I think at the staff level, we have experts that they know their jurisdiction and they know their needs and their dreams, and they can advise us, and they might know something we don't know. They may understand something in a way that we, at the board level, don't. And so, and it's, as far as I know, this JPA agreement has not been updated or revised, so that's according to the contract, so it's not unreasonable to bring them back into this conversation, to start that back up. So that's something I would like to see, so that we can work through, you know, the reserve policy is important to me, because what happens when you are basically pulling out all those funds for reserves, that's money that you're taking away that could have been supplemental funding that different jurisdictions, according to the JPA agreement, can decide how they want to spend that. They can upgrade their library, they can save it, they can put it toward different things, and they have to do it under the direction of the library authority with the support of the library board and authority. So it's not like they're taking the money and running with it. It's all for the betterment of the authority, but it does kind of clarify who gets. It kind of gives us a better idea of what we have to work with, so we know where we're going and what we have to work with, basically. So, and I'm not convinced that the dry period financing might save us money. You're worried about the 7% interest, but on a small amount of money, 7% may be less than what you're losing by having 11.7 million sitting in a bank that could have been put to use in our library system. And I believe in a conservative reserve, but I'm not sure 35 or 45% is the right number. I would like to receive some advice on that. And so that, I think, I did have one other question regarding the 5 million, because a year and a half ago when we started this conversation about, we have all this money in the bank, and I remember opening that conversation, and now we've allocated 5 million to, I think, Citrus Heights and Rancho and a couple of other entities, and then the 3.2 million to Sac City. The question I have is, were those 11A, did we take that money out of 11A funds for the refurbish and all that, or were those funds, the 5 million subtracted from supplemental funding, or was that taken out of the 11A fund?
11A isn't for, it really isn't for refurbishments. I mean, I'm looking at Jared because he manages our facilities team, but 11A actually covers things like somebody punches out all the lights in the parking lot at the Carmichael Library. The county comes out and fixes it. They charge us. That's what 11A is for. It's not to lay down new carpet when the carpet wears out. So it really is, it's the HVAC system. It's the HVAC system at the Rancho Cordova Library. It's the roof at the Rancho Cordova Library. It's the HVAC system at the Elk Grove Library, which continues to give us the heartburn. If
you're going to, wait, come up to the mic if you're going to speak.
Pretty soon we'll be holding hands and singing Kumbaya. I'll move over.
Yeah, it goes towards the general maintenance. It's the toilets, it's the HVAC, it's all of those components like Rivka said about window breaks or if we have lights go out. That's the whole function of that. It's kind of, I call it the core for maintenance for those buildings.
Okay, and then the
county could give you a detailed spreadsheet of all the expenditures under Fund 11A from the library. So, I mean,
okay,
we can do it.
so I guess I might be a little bit confused about, I guess those are the existing libraries that get refurbished by the authority, but that is not part of the supplemental funding. That is just funded by the library authority as a base cost, and that's subtracted out before supplemental funding is calculated.
Okay, I want to go back to the issue is the JPA describes how we are supposed to calculate supplemental funding. That's one of your big issues to decide, because it's based on budgets. So what staff did traditionally for the last, since the new JPA, probably since 2007, if based on budget, we didn't have a surplus, it went into the fund balance because that was what the
well, it's basically based on gross revenues because there's a calculation in Appendix B that shows it's the property tax and the circulation and the service area population. There's a very specific, it's not based on the budget we make, it's based on revenues that we get from property taxes, right?
So just to clarify, in Appendix B, it shows you how to allocate funding to the jurisdictions if there is supplemental funding. So that's not how to calculate supplemental funding, but once you've established that there is supplemental funding, Appendix B has the formula to then distribute it to the jurisdictions. And so under the provisions in Section 11 of the JPA, it says that you take the amount of anticipated tax revenue from the county side, you deduct from it the cost for base services, you deduct from it the cost for the indirect costs of base services, and then a reasonable reserve, and that leaves you with supplemental funding. And so, but it's based on, at the beginning of the budget that you do budgeting process, it doesn't, so you're basing it on anticipated revenues. There's no provision in the JPA to true that up at the end of the budget year. And so even before the JPA was changed in 2007, based on the budget records I looked at, there was a fund balance that was held, and the money that, and then even in 2008-9, after the Finance Advisory Committee created this formula, and there was the whole discussion of the JPA about moving money into the supplemental fund, or annual supplemental funding accounts, the fund balance that was left at the end of 08-9 was treated as fund balance and not as supplemental funding, and it was retained in the fund balance. And so they're really two separate pots, and the one is discussed in the JPA, and then the fund balance is just where that money has always gone, because it wasn't based on trued up numbers. It was based on the anticipated revenues. And so
this chart that is here, the supplement, this, you said this is available right now. If the board wanted to allow us to use some of this to expand Orangevale Library, the 2.2 million is available, but
Right.
what number did you calculate that on? Did you base it on what was just left in the fund?
So that
right now, or?
So that was in response to your question, which was if you took the fund balance and you deducted out 10% for reserves, what would be left that could be considered supplemental funding? And so that would require the finance advisor. So right now that's technically fund balance. And if the finance advisory committee wanted to meet and say, we think that, because the JPA delegates a certain amount of flexibility to the board and to the finance advisory committee. So the finance advisory committee could meet and they could say, look, here's the money that's left in the fund balance, this amount, and even though it's fund balance, we think that it should become supplemental funding. So let's do it let's do a true up now and allocate those funds as supplemental funding. But right now they're not technically supplemental funding, they're held in the fund balance. So that would require a meeting and the board's approval to do those things.
And changing direction.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I think having every jurisdiction, I think bringing the financial advisory committee into the conversation to help answer some of these questions and give us some perspective would be helpful for me. And we all, I know there was I guess maybe people did things different during the economic downturn. I'm trying to figure out what are the resources that we have to be able to get an Orangevale library, and moving forward, how can I understand this JPA and how it functions and know that, we're all represented equally. That's really what I'm trying to do.
Understood. And it's also
So
then...
let me see if I can make a suggestion, because we have a couple things going on here, and you need some direction. I know Mr. Natoli wants to chime in as well. I think what we could do, if Ms. Frost raises a good point about the Finance Advisory Committee, we really haven't done that. Excuse me. I don't have any problem if we want to convene the Budget Committee, but if we can, and I don't know if we need to come back to this board, if we can combine the Budget Committee with the Finance Advisory Committee, I think it's a good idea to have all the jurisdictions represented in there at the staff level. We certainly can't have all the jurisdictions represented at the elected level because we're then posting and doing Brown Act things. So I think moving forward, if we could do that, invite the finance people from the jurisdictions to come to that meeting. If we need to split the meeting, we can figure out how to do it, and some of these questions can be answered there.
Okay.
Would that be all right?
Sure.
All right, great. And then the other is kind of a policy question that we're going to get to in a minute. So, Mr. Natoli?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. Just a couple. Oh, did I hear that right? Yeah. Well, if you let me get started, I can get done. So, okay, yes, you heard it right. I wanted to ask about two different things. One being it kind of goes to the point that Director Frost was making, and maybe bundled in what the chair just offered, is that because you haven't done a calculation around the supplemental funding amount since only you did it in 14-15, I guess you did a calculation based upon board. Yeah. Was it 13-14? Yeah, there's a 14-15 here. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's 13-14.
Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, so but you just did that 1 year. My point being that you had not because you haven't had direction. But recognizing that with that direction, again, that's what the budget's reflected. It would seem to me that at a minimum, that each year we could know what that amount was for either drawn out in the discussion in the budget presentation. I mean, it's in there, it's in the fund balance. I've understood that, and this was very helpful. But that would allow for that conversation to occur annually. If we didn't give some other direction around that, at least to know that in any given year, based upon projections, where we are with our cash flow and all the various other funds and reserve holdings and so forth, it would be a flag that, any board member obviously could ask about at any time. But I think this is really helpful. For the years I've sat on this board, this has been very helpful to know kind of how the flow and what's held in order to, to accommodate when there's, a dry period and, meeting other obligations. And so I was going to offer that as one suggestion is maybe, and I wanted to ask along those lines, so the amount that was reserved in 08-09 that has never been allocated, that rides in the fund balance, is that what that's riding right now?
It's actually in a restricted fund.
Oh, it's in a restricted fund, so now it's in a separate fund.
Yes.
Right. So the Finance Advisory Committee did meet in 08-09, and they developed that formula that
Yeah, right, I saw that in here. Yeah.
And then those funds that were allocated are held. And
So
some of them have been spent.
Are they frozen? Are they frozen or what?
No, they've just been being held
They're just being held for what purposes?
for purposes as determined by the jurisdictions who are the holders of those. So
Okay,
the
Citrus
JPA
has to be
holds
theirs
them.
down, but the other jurisdictions know they're available to be drawn on, or would they just kind of ride there?
I'm sorry?
The money that's in the supplemental funding to 08-09, that they're being held in trust, I guess.
Yes.
So when do you reach in? How does the jurisdiction know I can reach in there and ask for those monies that were roped off?
We can reach out to the
Oh, no, I'm just
jurisdiction.
curious. Yeah.
We actually met with all of the jurisdictions in fiscal year 10-11.
Okay.
And we all said, you know what, let's just survive this.
Right, I get all that.
And I will tell you, because I did not do the detail of the budget, so full disclosure,
Yeah.
you've already renewed my contract, so now it's on you. Sorry.
But we're still sitting here, so.
So I was not involved with the budget at the level of detail that I certainly am now.
right, I get it.
And I read the document. Every year, the budget narrative says there is no supplemental funding to distribute.
Okay.
That's what our budget documents have said every single time we've submitted. The 3 times a year we submit our budget documents. So
okay.
I trusted that, and then
Yeah.
believe me, I've learned a lot.
Well, and I have too, Rivka, so that's the point, I think, and so it was kind of, going forward, and again, maybe this is for the committee structure to have a process.
Yeah.
I mean, the amount of money that's held in reserve is not going to build a new library somewhere, even if we're available to that, but I think the money's been held in trust, based upon, direction and where we were, economic uncertainty and all that, so it's probably timely, and very timely to have the conversation here. So, yeah.
And the logic behind that calculation may be a little bit flawed,
Right.
given the fact that about 20%, for example, of our circulation is electronic these days.
Okay.
And there are ways to get at that, but I'm going to warn you, you might not like the answer.
There might be a different calculus, I get it, okay,
Right.
okay.
So,
All right, and so, again, you've answered my question, I think there's a way, but I just was curious, the money is shown being there now for 10 budget years, and it's, I guess, it was there, it could have been drawn upon, but it was kind of unknown, I guess, it wasn't hidden, it was just unknown.
exactly, and
Okay.
and I want to say something else, and that is, this really is an issue of 25 years in the making, and I'm glad we're dealing with it. We'll finish it
Okay.
by the time my contract expires.
Okay.
At the rate we're going. No, hopefully a lot
Yeah,
sooner.
okay.
And we still have to remind the jurisdictions that a new facility is the responsibility of the jurisdiction. So much as we want a new library in Elk Grove, it's up to Elk Grove. Much as you want a new Orangevale library, it's up to Sacramento County.
Okay.
And so that's, that said, there are many things we can do that are interim possibilities.
Okay.
We use Rio Linda as our shining example.
Okay, all right, so again, you're making a lie around me because I'm getting brief here because I want to just ask one other question, and that is that on the unfunded long-term liabilities, the county portion shows it to be about a half of that. Is that reaching way back into long-term employees projecting forward, or why is the county have half of the?
It's based on our cost allocation.
It's based on the cost allocation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless I'm misstating it, but we do everything by formula.
So that's based on the 55%, 54.8%, is that what that is?
Yeah, the county is approximately 60%, so the county is generally going to be slightly higher than the city side.
Okay, and the county encompassing that then are the cities that are falling in that category?
The county cities, so
Okay.
the county and the 5 incorporated jurisdictions.
Okay,
yes.
thanks, that's it.
Okay, Darren.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go into this again a little bit. So when I see here on the reserve policy, we have a deferred maintenance, and I heard you earlier talking about Fund 11A and, if the light bulbs go out or whatever. So it appears like semantics to me in terms of deferred maintenance or maintenance when you need it, light bulbs going out being an example. Would it be possible to, if this deferred maintenance was not part of it, was part of that 11A, it could be reallocated. We cannot, unless we change.
I don't think we want to go down that road, but because the purpose of Fund 11A is, I think, specifically for those sort of routine maintenance and
it's for
those
the day-to-day.
items covered in the JPA. So the HVAC goes out, absolutely. But, I mean, where the money resides ultimately is up to you. If you decide that the county is a better steward of the county's funds and it goes in 11A, that's ultimately your decision. We will probably disagree with it because we have a little more flexibility sometimes than the county does when it comes to getting things.
I'm not understanding. So if deferred maintenance was part of, you have less deferred maintenance theoretically, is what.
I don't think so.
You don't
because
think so? Okay.
the carpet at any given library has hundreds of thousands of people walking on it every year. After 10 years, the carpet will need to be replaced. When we talk about deferred maintenance, we're talking about a table that is so splintered, somebody files a claim because they end up with a chunk of wood in their hand. Somebody trips because the carpet is ripped. That kind of deferred maintenance. That's what when we say deferred maintenance, we mean those items that we are responsible for ultimately, that the jurisdictions, let's put it this way. I believe the City of Sacramento has about $1.8 million set aside for deferred maintenance for 400 buildings. I think the county's is about twice that for 700 buildings. So it's an issue in every jurisdiction that we're not putting money aside so that we can ultimately buy a new roof.
I hear you. I mean, I guess what I'm getting at, if you have money locked away in deferred maintenance when you could use it for ongoing maintenance, I mean, deferred maintenance is just ongoing maintenance that's been deferred. So I'm trying to figure out why we have two pots.
And actually, Director Soon, that's what we're doing. I mean, in a way, it's sort of 6 of one, half dozen of another. We've been using fund balance to address those issues that the owners of the buildings have not been able to do, right?
Yeah.
To paint, to replace, the county replaced lights, and the city's used a fair amount of Measure U money to fix some of our libraries on the city side, electrical, some ADA, some things like that.
Okay, so maybe we could.
I want to try to help on this if I can, if that's all right. Sure. So let me ask the question this way, and I think this is what Darren's trying to get to. If you didn't have this 10% deferred maintenance in your reserve policy recommendation, my assumption is that 10% would be sitting in your operational funds and would be spent on the same thing.
Yes, yes.
So we're just kind of classifying it here and saying this is a target, as are the other pieces of what we want to get to on a reserve. Does that make sense?
I make sense. So I'm questioning why even have that in the reserves? Why not put it in there so you can use more in operational today?
Because that's the beauty.
I think they use this anyways. To me, the important part is when you get low on dollars, you stop doing deferred maintenance. This actually gives us a target of saying we want to do at least 10% of this for deferred maintenance. So it's a check on ourselves to make sure we're doing the right thing as far as the facility goes. Is that fair?
Okay.
So that's how I would look at it, as we could get rid of this and say it's operational, but I've been on enough boards and councils and things to know that that's the stuff we always put off as soon as we don't have money. This is where we're trying to say.
And it makes us think. It makes us very mindful if you make a different decision.
Yeah, okay, and let me just say one last thing. So all I'm saying is this could be applied to that new roof now, so you're not deferring the new roof. You could take care of it now, but I'll leave it there. I understand your rationale.
Actually, you're responsible for the roof.
Yes. Of all things. And the HVAC, apparently. All right.
Okay, so I think we're good.
Have we killed the
On
horse?
this,
I'm so sorry.
On this side of the dais, I think we're good. And so you need a couple things from us. One, you need direction. First of all, I want to provide some direction on what Ms. Frost was talking about and seeing if we can expand the Budget and Audit Committee to become a Budget Audit Finance Committee
Advisory Committee.
and invite the finance people from all the jurisdictions. I think that will help us through some of these conversations.
Thank you.
That's number one. Thanks. No, I think it's a good point that we need to bring that back, and if it can be helpful, that would be great. And Mr. Swinton will be facilitating that group as well, so it's great for me. Second piece is, I believe you want some direction on the levels of the reserve.
Targets,
The targets on the levels of reserve, and what I heard a little bit was okay with some consternation about that. I want to bring that back to this finance and budget audit committee. And then the third piece, which I think is the more complicated and potentially more difficult piece, is this how we calculate the supplemental. So we'll do that too. I think with the budget committee, we have good folks on it with some experience here that can bring back, with a charge to bring back a recommendation to this body. So if people are okay with that direction on how we calculate the supplementals. So we'll bring that. So one is process and two are recommendations to come back to the directors.
Yes.
Is that good?
Sounds good.
Mr. Chair, two people spoke on the reserve level.
Right.
And I didn't hear a consensus.
I didn't say there was one. I said we have some difference here. My feeling is because we didn't hear a lot of people, there's a staff recommendation in here. I didn't hear, other than one person, anyone disagreeing with that staff recommendation. If people do, they should speak up or get a note to
If
staff.
that's the assumption on this, with the 45%, yeah, I'm good with it.
Okay, great. Yeah.
The button, oh, there we go. Somebody.
I don't see
my
you.
request
I
to
don't-
speak is
I
not
don't
gonna-
see you up here. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, it wouldn't punch in, but I think they fixed it over here now.
Okay.
But the only thing that I would like the budget committee to take into consideration, particularly when we're looking at a 45% reserve balance. Yes, 10% when we have kind of questions about cash flow may be extremely low, particularly for an agency like this. But my concern is after going through our last collective bargaining agreement and the questions about where our lowest paid members of staff are, I want to be cautious about locking in too much and not being able to figure out a pathway for those at the lower end to figure out how to get to a certain place. So it may be 38, it may be 42, but I want to give that consideration when the committee meets.
Well, first of all, welcome to the budget committee, Mr. Guerra. I appreciate it.
I know. I already am on the budget committee.
Yeah, there you go. I do. It's a little bit of a misnomer, I think, to say 45% because the 10% of deferred maintenance is slightly different to me than the cash reserve and the reserve for economic.
No, I totally understand that.
But I think that's a very valid point. We should have all of those discussions. So I think if everyone's okay, Ms. Frost?
I would like more information before I say I'm on board with 45%. I would
But
like to
I'm
hear
not
what the
saying
Budget
anyone's-
and Finance Committee comes up with.
Right. I didn't say I'm on board with that. What I said is that
Okay.
that's kind of what I'm hearing, but a recommendation, this board will actually make the final determination.
Yeah, more information. Thank
Okay.
you.
Lori?
My question just has to do with the economic uncertainty reserve. I guess I'd at some point like know why 10% was picked for that and cash flow reserve was 25%. I don't disagree with the 45% reserve, but I tend to think that the economic uncertainty reserve at 10%, from my viewpoint, is still a bit low. I'm coming from a jurisdiction where we're holding 25% because we want 3 months operating in our reserve. So I don't really, when I read the staff report, I don't disagree with the 45%. I just didn't really understand why the cash flow was picked at 25 and the economic uncertainty at 10%, because it's...
Yeah, so I think I can answer that because the cash flow, and this was the request that I made, was to look at past recessions and see
Yeah.
where we were and what we would have needed to carry it through. But let me, on the direction, what we can also do is come back with, what I want to do is come back and have a discussion about options then that we have. And so maybe what we can do is say, if you do 45% total with the three pieces, this is what it means if you want to do 35 or, so we'll come back with some options for people and what the consequences of those options
Yeah,
would be.
I wasn't just sure that that was the breakdown that I would have liked to have seen, or I'd like to understand why that breakdown was picked.
But I just want us to have kind of a straw person so that we can go at that, okay?
Agreed.
Mr. Hernandez.
Quick question, Johnny, on that 45%, how many months does that keep us afloat if the worst case scenario happened?
6 months, right?
So in the worst case scenario, that would give us approximately about 80%. It's not like 100% that we can cover the total expenditures.
For 1 month?
For 1 year.
Oh, 1 year.
Right.
Okay. So
So-
currently at 10%, we can stay afloat for how long? 2 months?
Yeah, 10%, probably about 3 months.
Okay.
3-4 months.
Thank you, that's all I need.
Okay.
And if I may, just really quick, the 10, 25, and 10%, that's really no magic number, no set number.
We know it's no magic
Yeah.
number.
So
We got that.
It's-
We got
it's-
that.
it's
But if we
flexible.
can come back on, I think the deferred maintenance at 10% is probably a logical number that people can live with. If we can look at the reserve and the cash flow, I think those are the two that we can create some options around, as long as people know what the results will be if we do those things. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Appreciate the conversation. I'm sure that is crystal clear for you guys of what needs to happen now. We are going to, do we have any reports, ideas, and questions from board members? Okay, I see none on that. So we will go to our closed session. We will not have, we'll come back and adjourn the meeting, but we won't have anything to report out on the closed session. So we are in room 2, I believe, for the closed session. If we can get everybody there, this should be relatively quick. Is that correct, Rivka?
I'm sorry?
Fairly quick on the closed session?
It should be very quick.
Thank you.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.